As usual, the 555 creates a stimulating discussion amongst us. And now we're going to have a look at what we're doing here on Autistic Radio and through Autistic Association, the autistic charity wholly organised by autistic people to support the activity of Autistic Radio. I've made a decision, as far as I'm concerned, about how we're going to be steering the next few months ahead. We have a balance for our activities here at Autistic Radio. How much do we spend our time working with researchers? And how much do we spend our time working with people from the various professions around autism? And how much do we spend our times on what immediately suits us, serves us, networks us, puts us together as a self-sustaining, self-reliance movement? And speaking with my colleagues here at Autistic Radio, I feel supported when I say that we're going to be moving much more towards the self-reliance, resistance, ability to share amongst ourselves not just the positivity, not just a spin on our autism realizations, but the practicalities of it all. Supporting ourselves mentally through the output that we have here on Autistic Radio. So when I go down to speak with the big conference that I've arranged over a long period of time and got myself sorted for, it's really to say to them that yes, there will be possibilities for you to work with us in the future, but our focus is elsewhere. I'm opening the meeting to anybody to make comments from the floor on that.
I can understand the position. I think we've kind of talked about this a few times recently. That we need to shift our focus, which suits us, which we're comfortable with, and which we feel is more progressive. Because sometimes, in recent times, when we talk about talking with professionals, it's like a long slog for very little progress. And sometimes this feels that a lot of energy has been wasted. Not out of blame for anyone, it's just like, it's like our efforts that have been made is not given enough back. And I know yourself, Jules, has done a lot of work and done a lot of work with a lot of different organisations and really played patient and understanding of things can be a bit slow. But sometimes it's good just to break away from that and just focus on things that we can do a bit more progressively, like quicker. And you can see the blossoming of the efforts, a lot quicker than you would with professionals. Because I know it's a frustrating experience with some professionals. Some professionals are great, but some can be very frustrating, and they say they'll do something and then they appear to do something else, and their excuse is they're doing something in a way that suits within their funding or suits within the criteria of their work, and it's just a very frustrating experience. So that's my point on it.
I think it sounds way more fun.
Yes, I think given our conversation earlier in the 444, we have a lot to get into.
Wow, that's lovely. That's really supportive. It feels at this meeting we're definitely declaring those of us that are here today are pushing in the same direction. They support what we're saying here. Let's do it. Let's have that fun. You know, let's have that punk resilience movement, that revolution. Let's enjoy that part of it and really wring that dry for as much as we can for the next little while. Over to you then, Harry. Let's see what the 555 has for us.
Thanks, Jules. Good evening, everyone. This is the 555, Harry's Facebook, for Sunday the 9th of March 2025. This is where we discuss the Facebook posts that I've been sharing over the past couple of days. And the first post is from the Scottish Ethnic Minority Autistic CIC, who are a non-profit organisation and strive to improve understanding of autistic from the various communities of the global majority, based in Scotland, the UK. And what the post is about is that continuing the focus, the theme on autistic Ramadan. And it says day 9 because they've done quite a few things, like we've seen others do, similarly at Christmas time. So what they talk about is iftar, invites and sharing food. A beautiful cultural tradition of Ramadan is the sharing of food. When the days are shorter, it is common to receive invitations from family and friends to break fast together. Islamically, it is highly recommended to help others break their fast, whether by inviting them or sharing meals. However, as unmasking becomes more natural and life's weariness takes its toll, the pressure to participate in these traditions can feel overwhelming. Cooking for others, deciding what to make, worrying about whether it's good enough or if something will go wrong, these thoughts can be paralysing. To the outside world, it may seem like a lack of effort or care, but the reality is different. Thinking about others happens every day, but socialising and exposing oneself can be another challenge entirely. Not everything needs to be felt. Not everything needs to be seen to be felt. Sometimes care is shown in ways that go unnoticed, and that should be enough. Does this resonate with you? Share your story. The links provided below. Autistic Ramadan, Ramadan, Understanding Autism, Autistic Adults, iftar, support. What's people's thoughts on this post?
I would say all the best to those who celebrate, and also I can't imagine what it must be like. I think that feels like it could be a really big, massive change, like to cope with. I find it hard to cope with Christmas, and there's less, there's less expectation by the sounds of things than Ramadan too. So I'm just kind of reflecting on that.
There has been a lot of modifications to how this is celebrated, especially since the pandemic. There are options, I imagine, for people who may have difficulty with the social aspects, which I think is being indicated in this post.
Yes, things do progress, and the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, has changed a lot of things and how things are done. Sometimes it's even, it's been very, it's a bit more inclusive because of limitations that was there before. So you would hope that that's still the case in many ways, particularly for people who genuinely feel excluded from activity or feel excluded because they don't want to do it the so-called normal way. I mean, we've talked about it at Christmas. There's supposedly the festivities and the way you celebrate. There's a certain way of doing it. And if you don't do it that way, you're not respecting it, you're not doing it properly, or you're strange. So that must come into play with Ramadan as well, and other kind of festivities that happen all around the world in regards to people with autism, people that are autistic.
It seems to me that there's an obvious thing that Ramadan is associated with Islamic people, and it's a culture that I'm given the impression of that is not really up to speed with the concept of autism as neurodivergence. I'm given the impression it doesn't fit with the cultural thought, and so to have an organization that is out there looking at autism around our Ramadan, around within that culture, seems like a really lovely thing to have. It's a very niche part of people who are in Islamic culture and who are also autistic, and somebody is looking out for them. So I think that's something I want to comment on, how lovely that is that that organization itself exists.
Yeah, I've seen the woman who represents it in some online forums, live visual things. And it was really eye-opening what she had to say about this particular relationship with autism. I wonder if we could could this be spread out into a discussion about autism and spirituality and faith?
Well, that's an interesting topic. There's all different kinds of faiths, beliefs, and how autism would fit in within that because of the way some are believed, or the way that you've been taught, or the way that you've grown up to be taught to, either through, family or schools or any other way, church, mosques, all kinds of, temples, all kind of places that this can be done. A lot of people not a lot of, but what I've seen, or I think I've seen, I mean, it might be a misunderstanding, a lot of autistic people are interested in spirituality, feeling better from within, that sort of movement, that sort of thing. Many believe that other religions are a bit too, not strict, are strict and authoritarian, and and it's like certain ones are a bit more flexible with how you can, go about with your belief and go about your life in a certain way. Because other religions may be too much of a discipline, it's limiting to many people with autism. But it will suit a lot of people with autism as well, because as we know, a lot of people are different. Well, everyone is different, I should say.
This autism and faith thing is something that I think has legs. Because what I seem to notice is that autistic people are very well represented in every different niche of religion and no religion. And everything from fairies and tarot cards to full-on Republican right-wing religion. And it seems that autistic people are absolutely, inventing or willing to be part of a very niche belief systems. And then what I see is in the text there, somebody's written, or Raymond's written, I get that he gets this weird impression that science seems to dominate autistic culture. And I think that's one of the impressions that has been given, the Big Bang Theory, that kind of nerd idea. But it feels to me as though autistic people are much more also likely to be in fairies, pixies, supernatural, other ways of thinking, and using them kind of as metaphors, but kind of also as faiths and beliefs. And it's such a wide grouping.
Yeah, I get that. It depends what kind of forums you visit, or discussion communities, what their angles are on life,
Yeah, I mean, religion is an interesting one for me because at a particular moment I'm not particularly religious in terms of beliefs, kind of. But then sometimes I feel that it'd be better if I was religious. Maybe things were a bit nicer in terms of comfort of life and, a wee bit of explanation of why things are, because I'm always looking for logic. But then when you're talking about religion, I'm always looking for logic of how you can say certain things and why they exist, and especially if it's kind of superior beings, etc. But I was brought up as a Roman Catholic, and I went to Roman Catholic school, and I got went through the church and went through all that kind of ceremonial kind of stuff, from baptism to the communion up to the confirmation, the confessing your sins and all that. A lot of that was done in childhood, not forcibly. My parents weren't strict on it, but it was kind of part of the culture, and that's what the schools basically told you had to do. But as I got older, I just kind of felt it was just a bit. It's because the way that they practice it is, if you do something bad, you'll go to hell and things like that. And even though they tell you in other things that the God that you're meant to believe in is meant to be forgiving and forgives everything, and it's just all contradictory, and it doesn't make sense to me. So it's just as time went on, it just made more sense not to be too involved in that, because it just gave me a massive headache. But on the other hand, I wouldn't want to ridicule or put that thing down, because I know that it's helped a lot of people, live their life and be the way they are, and it's given them comfort, and it gives them, it does something for them. So I don't want to say just because it doesn't suit me in my way, I certainly wouldn't put it down, because it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just something that doesn't suit me as an individual.
I think what you're saying there, Harry, illustrates something else that I come across in autism, is that it's also more likely that if you're autistic, you will have either moved away from a religion as it was set out, like rejected it, decided it isn't for you, and or to move from one religion to another, or even try different ideas and really make that as part of your discovery of the meaning of the universe, kind of thing. That seems to be, those two things seem to go together. Rejecting what was laid out for you, and also dabbling in it to quite a big extent to try and make it an inquiry.
The next post is from Autistic Girls Network, who are a charity organisation who campaigns for and raising awareness of autistic girls and autistic masking. And what they've shared is an article from one of the trustees, Emily Katie, it's kind of quoted, "I felt I didn't belong. This is how understanding my neurodivergent brain saved my life." And I think I'll just go through the article itself before we move on to discussion. Basically, it says, in a piece for Processing a Frame of Mind series, writer Emily Katie shares how being diagnosed with autism transformed on how she relates to her brain. And the content note, this article contains several references to suicide and suicidal ideations that readers may find upsetting. Just to raise that, it's a kind of article. When I was 16, I believed wholeheartedly that I didn't belong in this world, that I was broken in some way, and that nothing would ever change that. I had known that I was different for as long as I could remember. My brain didn't seem to work in the same way as everyone else's. I interpreted things incorrectly, became overwhelmed easily, and appeared awkward in social situations. I did my best to copy those around me and suppress parts of myself that I was told were weird. But despite this, I never quite fitted in. My anxiety intensified to the point I was having daily panic attacks and developed OCD. This led me to the conclusion that the world simply wasn't designed for me. I didn't believe I had a future. After attempting suicide, I was admitted to a children's mental health unit where I was sectioned under the Mental Health Act. The whole experience was incredibly distressing, though there were some professionals who were kind and helped me as much as they could. I was unwell, but the environment made everything worse. My notes from my admission say that I had hysteric attacks when I didn't get my own way, but they were meltdowns from sudden changes, noise, lack of predictability, and fear. My parents queried if it might be autism, but my doctor said that I had just had high social anxiety. I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and mixed personality disorder, emotionally unstable and obsessive compulsive type, and discharged more traumatized than when I was first admitted. 6 months after my discharge, my life changed with a single sentence from a psychiatrist. "I think there is one explanation for everything that you've gone through. That explanation is autism." I remember not understanding entirely what autism meant, but feeling an overwhelming relief at finally knowing why it was different. I'd collected many labels already: weird, drama queen, gifted, stupid, hysterical, overdramatic, personality disordered, but this was the first one that made sense. I didn't yet have the full picture. 3.5 years later, at the age of 21, I would be diagnosed with ADHD too, but it was the start of a journey towards understanding myself. The diagnosis didn't change everything immediately. It didn't take away the challenges I experienced on a day-to-day basis, but understanding my brain saved me in more ways than one. My autism diagnosis meant that most of the mental health professionals working with me stopped viewing my difficulties through the lens of a personality disorder I didn't have. Therapy could be adapted to accommodate my autism. I had a CETR, Care Education and Treatment Review, which aims to prevent autistic young people being admitted to hospital, and my medication was adjusted. I didn't need to be medicated with antipsychotics. I needed to be understood. Too often, autistic people's needs are not understood in the mental health system, resulting in misdiagnosis and inappropriate treatment. Connecting with the neurodivergent community showed me that I wasn't alone. Although every autistic person and person with ADHD is different, there are things that unite us, like a depth of our intense interest and an experience of feeling misunderstood. Just because someone shares the same diagnosis as me doesn't mean we'll be best friends, but learning that there are other people who are experienced in the world in a similar way to me was a revelation. I wasn't the only one. That made me think. I didn't believe that other neurodivergent people didn't have a place in the world, so why did I believe that to be true for myself? I threw myself into learning everything I could about autism and ADHD. This gave me the language to describe the experiences that I'd never understood. I wasn't having hysteric attacks, I was having autistic meltdowns, an involuntary response to overwhelm. I wasn't a drama queen. I was experiencing sensory overload because my heightened sensitivities to sensory stimuli. I wasn't stupid or lazy. I was experiencing difficulties with executive functioning, cognitive processes such as planning, prioritization, working memory, and time management that are typically harder for those with ADHD. It wasn't my fault. I started to be able to reframe core negative beliefs I held about myself. Instead of hating myself for being hysterical, dramatic, and stupid, I looked at my challenges with more neutrality. I knew now that certain things were harder for me, and I knew why. With the understanding of my challenges also came an understanding of my strengths. One of the things I'd been criticised for growing up was my expression of joy. I was too much. I needed to tone it down. When I read about autistic joy for the first time, I resonated deeply with this description. For me, autistic joy is one of the most beautiful things about being autistic. It is an all-encompassing, intense feeling of joy that completely consumes and floods my body with warmth. It makes me want to jump up and down, stim, like making repetitive body movement sounds, and squeal with excitement. For so long, I felt ashamed of this. But when I understood it was okay for me to express my joy differently to other people, and that the authentic version of me was acceptable, I started to embrace it, and it has made life so much more colourful. As I learned how my brain worked, I was able to identify ways that could help with my challenges. For instance, knowing that I struggled with executive dysfunction, I was able to implement strategies into my work life, like visual charts and using hyperfocus to my advantage. Small bursts of intense focus mean that I get my work done, but I don't need to beat myself up for a lack of consistency. Rather than trying to adapt my brain to do things in a certain way, I learned to adapt things to suit my brain. Little by little, life became easier, and there were fewer mornings when I woke up wishing I hadn't. Simply accepting that my brain worked differently to other people's, and that it's okay, meant my life started to change enormously. I started to see that I had been trying to force myself to fit into a mould, desperate to be like everyone else and not stand out. But I was learning that I couldn't keep forcing myself into situations I found overwhelming and distressing. The panic attacks and meltdowns were too damaging, and I didn't want to end up back in a mental health crisis. If I didn't know I was neurodivergent, I'd probably still believe that I was lazy and difficult. But because I have this knowledge and understanding, I can make my own adjustments in my day-to-day life. Something that everyone should feel able to do regardless of whether they're neurodivergent or not. There is no one right way to do anything. and it's okay for people's journey to look a little different. After my ADHD noticed, I started ADHD medication. The difference this has made is monumental. ADHD medication doesn't solve everything, but now my thoughts aren't constantly racing, my brain feels less exhausting. I am less impulsive, I can think things through properly, and work isn't so difficult. I can't believe how much quieter my brain feels and how much easier it is to get on with tasks and focus properly. ADHD medication has made my life more manageable. Over the past few years, the most valuable thing I've learned is that I don't have to do things the same way that everyone else does. I recently attended my friend's hen do, a weekend filled with things that made me anxious, like socialising, noise, and new places and a change in routine. But instead of not going or struggling through it, I decided to actually cater to my needs. I told my friend I wouldn't be going clubbing because I couldn't cope with the noise and anxiety. I took breaks when I needed to. I wore my noise-cancelling earphones in restaurants. I didn't drink alcohol. I was back in my hotel room by 11 p.m. each night with a book. And because I wasn't panicking, I was able to celebrate my friend properly, and we all had a lovely time. Being able to make adjustments for myself and advocate for what I need means that I can enjoy occasions like this, and that makes life feel more worth living. I am so grateful to have the knowledge and understanding that I'm autistic and have ADHD. I don't know how I would have got the cycle of self-hatred and self-destruction had I not gained this knowledge or this understanding of myself and neurodivergent community. I truly believe that understanding my neurodivergent brain saved my life. It has given me a purpose too, to advocate for others like me. I am the Sunday Times best-selling author of Girl Unmasked, How Uncovering My Autism Saved My Life, a blogger, a mental health nurse, and trustee of the charity Autistic Girls Network. I have friends who accept me for who I am, but more importantly, I accept myself for who I am. I never thought I would make it past the age of 16, but I have, and life is now filled with joy. If I could tell someone who had a similar journey to me one thing, I would say this: no one is ever too broken or too much of a failure to be in this world. You deserve to have your needs met and your strengths appreciated. Please don't ever give up hope. I know it was quite a mouthful, probably a lot to listen to, but I thought it was important that it was read right through so that we can have a discussion on that particular topic. What's others' thoughts on this?
Thank you for that, Harry. Take a wee rest now. I noticed you had a wee bird singing in the background as well, which says a lot for how I concentrate. But I took all that in whilst also checking her out online. She's 22 now and she's a qualified mental health nurse. And the BBC article is quite informative about her. But that was quite an informative article. I'll withdraw just now.
I found the post very relatable in a lot of ways, and what she was saying about I don't know how to put it into words. It's like stopping gaslighting yourself about the reality you're experiencing, except like knowing that you've got an autistic brain and it being a life-changing and life-affirming experience. I really do relate to that, and I liked where they were saying that there's like so many other, like kind of along the lines of that there's so many different ways to do stuff, and I just feel like that is the conclusion I came to too, and I'm glad to hear somebody else saying it.
Yeah, reading that, just felt great to read it, read out aloud, because there's so many people that are feeling lost and feeling, that lost that they're even feeling suicidal. And I've been in that situation myself a long time ago, around the age of 16, 17, because I wasn't sure of what the hell was going on before the diagnosis came along and everything began to make sense. Not right away, but it began to make sense of why it was different and why things were difficult in many ways. And it's good to read and hear about similar experiences and other individual experiences and how that's helped people to build a more positive life, to become like an inspiration to others. And generally, from what I kind of read from these sort of stories, is at the end of the day, they get to somewhere in their journey where they feel a lot better than they did, a lot more positive, and it's very successful, but not taking anything for granted and not thinking it's the end of the journey, but also wanting to help people in a similar situation, because you know what it's like to feel really bad, really down and feeling worthless, that sort of language. So it's good it kind of gives you an incentive to help others that may be feeling the same. Not force anybody to do what you do, but at least give a bit of hope to people that if you do things in your own way, there's light at the end of the tunnel. The next post is from the Autistic Tiger, who's an artist. Tiger Valak is an 11-year-old autistic savant artist. He is the creator of the Autistic Tiger, an alter ego. And what they've shared is a quote. Autism doesn't end at 18. Meltdowns don't end at 18. Don't stop your love and support at 18. What's other people's thoughts on that? The reason I shared it, just to add, is I've been aware in the past in terms of services and even outlook that autism is kind of children specific in ways because you want children to get the best start in life. But what seems to be forgotten, and I've seen this myself in terms of services being provided and support being provided, that it doesn't end at 18, 21 or 25. Sometimes it goes up to about mid-20s, if you're lucky, and then left to fend themselves. And it's just to kind of make people realise that it's a lifelong thing, and people who require support will need it more longer than it will be just childhood to make a fulfilling life for some people.
I'm just looking at that link to my Shopify site where he's selling some of his images of his alter ego. I kind of respect and admire this idea of monetizing your difference.
Yeah, well, why not? There's people making careers out of you anyway. Professionals and certain behaviourists and therapies and stuff. So if you've got something, even a talent, a skill, there's no harm in monetising yourself that way. Especially if it kind of promotes yourself in a positive way, which a lot of people do need if that's what they want to do. The next post is from Neurodivergent Lou, who's a blogger who's finding a place in a neurotypical world. And Neurodivergent Lou has shared a presentation about, as an autistic person, I wish I could convey how much energy it takes to exist. So I'll just go through it. As an autistic person, I can't convey exactly how exhausting it can be. Lots of autistic people experience constant exhaustion, sometimes without really knowing why. They may struggle with having to limit their activities due to this too. Autistic people also sometimes describe experiencing physical symptoms of exhaustion too. Reasons why autistic people may have less energy includes masking autistic traits, difficulties with sleep, a tendency to see the smaller details before the bigger picture, and the executive functioning struggles. Having spiky skills profile, meaning we have to work harder than others in certain areas. The exhaustion of sensory issues. The pre-planning for every scenario. Using energy communicating and decoding social interactions. Also adapting to changes in routine. Struggles regulating emotions. Brain processing more than information at rest. Co-occurring chronic illness events. And I myself know I haven't taken my exhaustion and lack of energy seriously enough at times. I have expected myself to push through, when in reality I need to rest and look after myself. But it can be so hard, particularly with the unconscious messaging from society, which suggests that in order to be worthy, we need to always be productive. It can feel like we're having to meticulously monitor and manage our energy in order to look after ourselves. We may be desperately trying to avoid burnout, which can be incredibly difficult. It can feel like we are constantly on the edge, one wrong move away from becoming burnout. Burnout can mean becoming unable to do anything and losing the ability to do what we need to. What's people's thoughts on this one? I can understand it from a personal perspective, but what are other people's opinions?
The next page on that seems to be a resource pamphlet on experience autistic burnout. 100-page resource giving you neuro-affirming tools to navigate autistic burnout. So I just thought I'd put that in there. Yeah, a lot of these are identifiable. Lack of sleep I've been noticing that recently. It's not that I'm an insomniac or anything or have any difficulty sleeping. I love sleeping. It's just I won't let myself go to bed at the right time. Because they used to call it FOMO, fear of missing out. And it used to be like using media or being online. But now it's kind of like reading and writing. And I just push past the time when I'm tired. And then I'm not tired anymore. So I should get out of that habit, especially at my age.
The strange thing I feel is that if I don't have something to do, I'm not doing anything at all. It's like there's something I've missed out. It's like, I have all these meetings, day after day, just the way that some of my weeks work in because of the commitments I have. And then there's a sudden day where I've got nothing. And I'm going, there must be something I've missed out here. It's just like my body, it has a resistance to relax because it's that busy looking to complete tasks, to complete issues, or to plan ahead. And it's like there's this day, which isn't a weekend, it just feels odd not to be doing anything. And don't get me wrong, I do find something to do anyway. And I try and say to myself, that's just a natural thing. There's going to be the odd day where you've been committing and then a day where it's quiet. Enjoy it, embrace it. If you've got things to do, within like emails, and I do things online with Facebook and all that, you don't need to kind of hammer in it. You can spread over the day. You can even sleep a bit longer. But the habit I've got, Raymond, as well, is I don't sleep enough. Sometimes I stay up all night, then go to bed about 7 o'clock in the morning, then get up about 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. A habit I've got into. No, I don't think it's a disastrous thing because it's not affecting me the next day in many ways, but there's sometimes that it does. Like I sometimes do that on a Monday even when I've got the Tussie radio the next day at 10 o'clock. But the way I look at it as well, it's in the house, and what I can do is can have a wee nap after it. And then before I'm doing something later on in the day, it's like I've got into this habit of napping rather than sleeping. The next post is from the autistic teacher. Public figure, autistic and proud, sharing insight and understanding to help the autistic community based in the UK. And what they're sharing about is autism and special interests. Autistic special interests are more than just hobbies. They are windows into a world of passion, expertise, and endless possibilities. Special interests are not just trains and planes and can be just about anything. Similar to hobbies, however, for a neurodivergent person, a special interest differs in intensity. It is a deep enthusiasm that drives us to immerse ourselves in a chosen area of expertise. They bring joy. For many neurotypical individuals, special interests may be seen as mere hobbies or something to pass the time. However, for autistic individuals, these special interests are much more than that. They are a source of comfort, joy, and purpose in a world that can often feel overwhelming and confusing. Special interests provide a sense of predictability and control, allowing us to engage in activities that bring genuine pleasure and fulfillment. Expertise. One of the most remarkable aspects of special interests is the level of expertise and knowledge that autistic individuals develop in their chosen fields. The intense focus and dedication that they bring to their special interests often results in a level of mastery that is truly impressive. Whether it's memorising intricate details of a favourite movie, becoming an expert in a specific academic subject, or excelling in a particular skill or talent, autistic individuals often have a depth of understanding that is truly awe-inspiring. Social interaction. Special interests can also be a bridge to social interaction and connections with others. Shared interests provide a common ground for building relationships and forming communities based on mutual passion and enthusiasm. As we share our expertise and knowledge with others who share the same interests, we can expand our social circle and contribute valuable insights and perspectives. Safe. When I think about my special interest, it feels safe and comforting. I also feel more confident when talking to others, like I actually have something valuable to contribute. It gives me energy and happiness. It allows me to regulate. Employment. In some cases, our special interests can become a means of employment. We might find that our expertise and dedication to a special interest becomes highly desirable for employers. Boundaries. There is a point where a special interest can become unhealthy. It can push an autistic individual to the point of exhaustion. It can cause us to forget some of the other important stuff going on in life. It's a good idea to give yourself some boundaries, like limiting the time. For me, no more research after midnight, or by adding in something else that you enjoy, like a walk or some sensory time. Understanding. Having a special interest is all part of being autistic. Our interests can change and swap. It can be a sad and anxious time where we transition to another interest. Our special interests are often celebrated but often not understood. I hope this goes some way to helping you to understand the joys and downfalls of special interests. What's other people's thoughts on this particular topic?
Well, one of the things I heard was the phrase special interests repeated about a couple of dozen times. And other than the insight, the insight seems pretty good. We do really get into things. We do have passions for things, can be joyous. There's just something a bit pejorative about that term special interest. We've tried to move it more towards passion, towards specialism, towards professionalism, professional interest. There's all kinds of other synonyms. But in the end, people do need to sort of umbrella this together to know what we're talking about. So the archaic language persists.
Does anyone here have a special interest?
I've had a few throughout my life, and when earlier on when you were reading I was thinking about how engaging with them was always like quite a relaxing, kind of restorative like thing to do. And then I was thinking about when they said about but it can be exhausting, you can go over your limits. I'm like, oh yeah, that can happen as well. But like I've got like I'm a big scheduler now, and the sort of time that I have like that is my own time to do stuff. Like I know that I can recharge by like, you know, normal resting, or I can kind of do an activity that like that's connected for me to some of my passions, and I find myself as charged up as, you know, if not more charged sometimes. So it's all been about kind of like, I suppose my life so far has been about getting balance. It's something that works for me to do. But yeah, like I also get the kind of, when things have been wonky, it's been like a place you know, getting right into these special interests has been like, I suppose it's like a place where like I've been able to escape. But I remember before I really understood my autism at all, I did have a bit of a sense of shame about some of this, my special interests, because, or like there would be times that they would be really like niche and kind of non sort of functional, and like it was just really hard to explain why I needed to kind of record information in a really arbitrary seeming way, but it made me feel a lot better. So it's something I hid a lot, whereas now I wouldn't feel the need to.
It's a shame because you were trying to share it with others, or did you actually feel shame in yourself? Because I know what you're saying there, but I didn't try and share my things with other people, really. See what I mean?
Yeah, like the shame that I'm talking about wasn't coming from sharing. It was more like feeling like I needed to hide, or just not be seen kind of engaging in my kind of strange list making stuff that was, you know, kind of part of this self-soothing. I just knew that other people didn't do that, and that, like, you know, wanted to go off and copy stuff out and, you know, remove the information around was just not what other people thought of as recreation. So it was that, like, I think it was just like the bits of myself that I really didn't understand.
Is that not what they call research? I mean, in the sense that now you like schedules. In a way, it's an extension of your previous special interest. I wouldn't say your special interest now is schedules, you know, but it's like balance, isn't it?
Yeah. So it was kind of research, but it's also like there was like, and it's not something I do as much now that I'm older, but maybe it's because I just don't have as much time. But I used to really enjoy like cataloging and re-cataloging and just doing like, you know, going over the information like quite repetitively. So it was like kind of research, but kind of just like a nice little routine.
It's over the boundary into stimming, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, feels good.
It's not a constant research. It's not a I have to know absolutely everything about dinosaurs, or a cliche like that, or the Ford 1976 Escort. It's a repetition and a comfort and a stim that goes with dealing with the information that's around your interest. And that can be physical as well. That can be like the kids, autistic kids, lining up their cars or their teddies, or cataloging things and going through that again and again and again. So there's kind of this, often your special interest has lots of opportunities within it for other activities that are basically stims. That, you know, your special interest might be medieval uniforms, and then there's an awful lot in that which is cross stitch, and the stim is the continually use of your handicraft.
Yeah, what Jules just said there made me think about, you know, the extension of stimming as like an embodied performance. You know, I used to know people whose son had Asperger's at the time, and he ran a bookshop, and he was obsessed with DJing, but he was only obsessed with DJing one album called Now That's What I Call Music. And what he was really into was wearing a leather jacket while he did it. So he was always at me for leather jackets. Could I get one? Do I have any? Blah, blah, blah. And reflecting back on that, I'm thinking, it's like a performance, isn't it? Stimming itself sometimes. It's like an enacted, embodied situation. And it made me think about a conversation we had during the series about Jules traveling. And I got this impression that what Jules was doing in India at times was, in a sense, simply just walking around. But that itself, and when you mentioned the clothing that you wore and things like that, made me think like not an intentional performance, but just performing, just being yourself to a certain extent. And that can be a very core, essential, special interest, if you see what I mean. I hope that sounds okay.
I would absolutely go along with what you're saying, and there's a bit where you went to equivocate on it, and I would actually go, no, it is a performance, and it is a kind of known performance, and that is a release, that is an opportunity.
I'm glad to hear that from you, because I sometimes assume things about people. It's so easy. It's almost like I think I can read them. But anyway, yeah, and so I get hunches, and like I just say it sometimes, but I was equivocating there in case, like, perhaps I was wrong.
It's almost like LARPing, you know. There's a
role playing,
there's a role playing thing where people really get into a certain characterization, and that could be anything from manga comics to a particular part of a century's history or something, reenactments and things like that. So yes, definitely, it's performance and play. I think I would like to err it towards more play than performance, because the performance part of it isn't for an audience, because it's for yourself. So the performance is a kind of self-referential play, a playfulness, not a childishness, an adult playing, you know?
There was a theory a while back, about 2 decades ago, called The Play Ethic. It was a book written by the singer of the band Hue and Cry, Pat Kane, who's a journalist. And it's a really good theory he had about play, but there's a long lineage there in research into play as a way of living. But there was something else you were saying. I was just tuning into that, but it's gone now.
I heard about play recently in relation to mental health or something like that people had an attitude that they were being playful about their lives, and embodying play into their lives had a better slow decline, you know. There's something about that in it as well. It should be something that as autistic people we have more access to. We hear Harry sometimes saying about how where he gets out of control and over the top and stuff when he's really up for stuff, and people try and suppress it. You know, that's part of us, that we have this exaggeration or possibility of joyous feelings, and that is really one of our real good things that comes with autism, that exaggeration of joyfulness. And play, if we can hold on to that, not be shamed out of it, not be bullied out of it, not be conformed out of it, but can make playful with it. And it links back to what Nicola was also saying earlier, and also in the 4x4 about the clown business. That's a play, characterization, clowning, and experimentation in different circumstances with different people and social circumstances. It's a way of getting around the anxiety. It's a way of getting around the performance of conformity anxiety.
The next post is from Autism to Max, who's a digital creator, adult autistic, also CPTSD and CPD. I'm also a wife, a mum, a Meemaw, proving it can be done. Based in Trinidad, United States, Colorado. And what I've shared from them is a milestone, which I like to share from different posts that were shared over the last couple of years. What she says is, I gained 11,730 followers, created 549 posts, and received 61,326 reactions in the past 90 days. Thank you for all your continued support. I could not have done without you. What's other people's thoughts?
Those sound like some motivating numbers.
In a sense, it sort of follows on from special interest, doesn't it?
Yes, you could say that. Because a lot of people's special interests, including mine, is, starting or creating a Facebook group or page which is specific to a niche. And of course, one of them is Autistic Radio, and it shares things. All it's about basically is autism, discussions, positive, things about autism, a kind of safe space that one or two people have says that it's the only place that they look at, away from, the way that the dangerous and horrible place that Facebook can be. Especially nowadays, things are quite brutal and quite harsh. So I like that. That's part of my hobby, is like knowing that I provide that, and I always look forward to sharing posts and sharing the podcasts that we do when we put them on, and just kind of editing some of the posts and things. And I do that with other ones, like the local Tennis Reds Association as a information feed, like a virtual notice board, and I also do it with the local community council and other things. And it's just, that's when I talk about when I have a day of rest. It's like, wait a minute, I've got something to do, and I put pressure on myself. But on the other hand, it's good to know that I'm getting up in the morning and there's at least something to do by updating those pages. And in many ways, it can feel like a job, but mostly it feels like a hobby and a special interest. And it's nice seeing that a lot of people kind of do that in many ways as well, in the autistic pages and groups and individual profiles that we share.
Yeah, Harry, and with a smartphone, you can do that almost anywhere. It's almost sometimes like you notice that a good portion of the world is doing that. They're on their smartphones all the time. Whether or not they're updating some sort of social media thing is another thing. But when you qualify Facebook as being quite brutal at times, I've got to say, sometimes I find just the evening news worse than Facebook. So I never see anything on Facebook I don't need to see, because I use some kind of app thing that blocks that. But when you look at the stats there that you mentioned, This is what people normally use social media for, as a connection, a community, and creating a world, which is what I was saying earlier about when we seek other worlds, through acting out and performance. And in a sense, when we go online and in social media, we're performing to a certain extent, but it's a virtual relationship, and it's not going away, so it's as valid as any other, I suppose.
The next post is from Jordan James, the autistic photographer, who's a public figure, autistic ADHD, dyslexic and generally neurodivergent photographer, parent, husband, advocate, ND specialist, author, and host of the Neurodivergent Experience podcast. I'm also a motivational speaker, so please email me for inquiries. And what Jordan has shared is a quote, a personal quote. Autism for me isn't just a disability. It is a neurological difference that comes with individual disabilities and individual abilities. To blanket label us all as just disabled doesn't help. It just makes us all out to be the same, which we definitely are not. What's other people's thoughts on that? The next post is from the BBC, and it's regarding the Chancellor of the UK, who's set to cut welfare spending by billions, which will affect a lot of autistic people. So I'll just read out the article, which was issued on the 5th of March 2025 by Faisal Islam, economics editor of the BBC News. And it says that the Chancellor has earmarked several £billion in draft spending cuts to welfare and other government departments ahead of the spring statement. The Treasury will put the proposed cuts to the government official forecaster, the Office for Budget Responsibility, OBR, on Wednesday amid expectations the Chancellor's financial buffer has been wiped out. Sources says the world has changed since Rachel Reeves' budget last October, Rachel Reeves being the Chancellor, when the OBR indicated she had a £9.9 billion available to spend against her self-imposed borrowing rules. The OBR's forecast is likely to see that disappear because of global factors such as trade tariffs, as well as higher inflation and borrowing costs in the UK. The Treasury will on Wednesday inform the OBR of its major measures, essentially changes to tax and spending in order to meet the Chancellor's self-imposed rules on borrowing money. The government is committed to debt falling as a share of the economy during this course of this Parliament, and only borrow to fund investment, not to cover day-to-day spending. Such rules, put in place by most governments in wealthy nations, are designed to maintain credibility with financial markets. Reeves has repeatedly said our rules are non-negotiable. The spending cuts drafted by the Treasury will help plug the gap that has emerged in recent months, ahead of the OBR publishing its forecast and Reeves giving a statement on the 26th of March. The Treasury has blamed several global factors, including trade tariffs and the war in Ukraine, for pushing up government borrowing costs. Clearly, the world has changed a lot since the autumn budget. People are watching that change happen before their eyes, a government insider told the BBC. The Office for Budget Responsibility will reflect the changing world in its forecast later this month, and a changing world will be a core feature of the Chancellor's response later this month. Insiders expect politically painful new welfare cuts that are designed to reduce the huge growth in health-related benefits, which will be outlined in a forthcoming speech from Work and Pensions Secretary Liz Kendall. Asked on Wednesday if welfare cuts were the right approach, Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood Asked on Wednesday if welfare cuts were the right approach, Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood told BBC Radio 4's Today programme there had been a huge rise in the welfare budget and there were too many young people not in work, education or training. There's a moral case here for making sure that people can work are able to work. And there's a practical point here as well, because our current situation is unsustainable, she added. Reeves has previously pledged fundamental reform of the welfare system with concerns over rising spending on health-related benefits. Last year, the government spent $65 billion on sickness benefits, a 25% increase from the year before the COVID pandemic. That figure is forecast to increase to around $100 billion before the next general election. Some of that is a legacy of COVID, but ministers have complained about the incentives which encourage some to game the system. People on universal credit must show evidence that they have applied for jobs or face sanctions. But people out of work who also qualify for sickness benefits both get more money and not necessarily required to seek work. Steve Wright, Fire Brigade's Union General Secretary, said any welfare cuts would be an outrageous attack on the poorest and most vulnerable. The Chancellor will argue she hasn't changed her plans and that the government was always going to fix the welfare to get people back to work and make the NHS more productive. Headroom or no headroom, the Chancellor is determined to push through the change we need to make Britain more secure and prosperous, with the whole government making that argument in the coming weeks, an insider told the BBC. And then it goes on about Donald Trump. I'm not going to go into all that. In the run-up to Spring's statement, Cabinet Office Minister Pat McFadden, Health Secretary Wes Streeting will also retain significant efficiency drive within the civil service and they hope to lead significant headcount and cost savings. It is understood that the Euro area economy is stagnating and lower productivity numbers have affected OBR's forecasts. But there have also been concerns raised about the impacts of Reeves' previously announced tax rises on businesses, which will take effect in April. Inflation, which measures the rate of prices over time, is expected to rise in the coming months as households are hit with increases to energy, water, and council tax bills. So basically, they're harming the vulnerable to balance a budget. What's other people's thoughts, particularly the effects on many autistic people?
There's a certain reality check in this, isn't there? Because the politics of the moment are that we are in the worst position coming out of COVID than any of the other economies. mostly because our health service wasn't resilient enough to be able to cope with COVID and then get back to normal straight after. Like Germany didn't have an increase in backlog of cancer patients and such like that we have now. An awful lot of our workforce has been forced into long-term sickness because we have not had the ability to keep people in their normal jobs, and they've fallen into an inadequate system. The shit that we're in economically means that it's a done deal. It's going to be savage. The savings that are going to be looked for by any government in the economic crisis that we have been left in with the mismanagement of COVID and the loss to the taxpayer. We took on the most amount of debt, and because of the way that they supported the economy, with the least amount of benefit in comparison to other countries that are comparable. The absolute mess. So it's almost as though arguing for anything other than what is going to be a very, very hard economic future over the next decades is futile.
I feel like I'm a bit more concerned about the billionaires that are gaming the system than I think the whole, that line, gaming the system, that's absolutely disgusting to be applying that to like people who are needing support, like when we've got, like, we're in the worst position coming out of COVID, and you see like 15 contracts worth 15 billion had corruption red flags from the Tory COVID contracts and stuff too. And it's like, people, our country is a lot poorer after COVID, but billionaires like got so much money out of that. They're getting so much money out of all the bad stuff. So I feel like let's keep pointing the finger towards them. And what if we had a wealth cap of like 10 million? Like, that just seems more reasonable.
Well, the problem is how governments that are supported in campaigns are getting elected in the first place, and who really runs the country, without getting into this kind of so-called paranoia thing. It's not paranoid, it's true. It's so obvious it's true, because the big mistakes, or even, things that are deliberately done, done in billionaire terms, done in the financial terms, there's no consequence of that. What they generally do is, to counter that, whether it's the same government or not, they'll just go and hit the poorest, because the poorest and the most vulnerable don't or can't fight back the way that the ones at the top could, because they can play a system, they can even play the law, the legal system as well. I mean, there's many people that are vulnerable and things like that can go down certain avenues and can get the support, but it's very draining fighting for something you should get anyway. And what really annoys me about all this is they're trying to make people feel, who are on benefits, like myself, and have been for many years, to feel bad about your own existence. You've been a pest, you've got to do more. After years and years of trying to make, to like myself and my well-being in the first place. And I feel this sort of thing is just going to hit people, so many people hard, not just financially, but, medically, healthily, as human beings. It's going to hit people hard. It's not just an autistic thing, but it's going to, a lot of people work in that as well. It's going to hit people so hard that it's just going to be a total negative effect, all because of power games by politicians who are themselves generally millionaires and billionaires anyway, and have no clue or what it's like to live that many people do in the country.
I think it's not that they don't have a clue, it's if they don't care, and we need to keep pointing the finger back at billionaires when they try to start pointing at us. And like you said, it's like, you know, I too am on benefits, and when I look around and I think about the people that I know, there's like really there's unpaid work that happens. It's just like not valued, but it's almost like the equivalent of like a whole little ecosystem that happens. And it's like that we shouldn't be ashamed of ourselves like at all when, you know, look at you, Harry, with like the committees and stuff you get involved in, and the things that happen because, you know, you've been able to volunteer your time there to do that. And like, you know, and the small contributions can make a really big difference when people are volunteering. And I think it's just like that empowerment and self-esteem has to be so there, because yeah, it could get hard, it could get really difficult, but like I always feel like in terms of like if you were trying to heal an issue, the first thing is like trying to get a really good understanding of what the problem is, and I think it's billionaires.
It's very much like the early 1980s when Thatcher came in and it was cut, throw the baby out with the bathwater. And the only way forward in this, because the way it's working out is that the inequality is increasing, more in this country than other countries. So it does have to hit some kind of threshold. But we can hope that some radical solutions will have to come through, because it's such a bad situation that things are falling apart to such a degree. There has to be some radical solutions. And last time, one of the radical solutions was called the Enterprise Allowance Scheme, which was a system that you could game, but it also meant that artists gamed it, and theatre people gamed it, and all kinds of arts organisations gamed it. So there was essentially a basic living wage, or a basic universal wage that was given to people for short periods of time. So something like that could come through and out of this. All the current thinking is just the status quo, and it's not going to get us anywhere. We can just hope that the crisis is big enough for some really imaginative things coming through based on what Nicola talks about in the community.
Well, that's the hope I have, and that's what keeps me going, because I'm involved in all the things that I do, that even though things are kind of bleak in many ways, it's like there's a progressive kind of thought process to keep going and hope for change and do things, and you know, even small things to keep things positive, because there's this overwhelming of negative stuff. I mean, as everybody aware is, you know, we're talking, obviously that's talking about UK level, but at local level, councils have just announced, you know, massive cuts to, you know, services. I mean, Western Barnshire, I mean, I was at a demo, you know, with the organisations that were kind of getting affected, and that included like Women's Aid, which didn't get cut in the end, but others did. Even the community council I was in, there was going to be cuts to that funding, but that didn't happen either. But what they have done away with is the Care of Gardens scheme, where vulnerable people could get their gardens looked after by the council. They're no longer going to do that. They're just basically saying you must get a gardener yourself, you know. But I know that's kind of trivial in many ways, but many people are quite, you know, that's a big sudden, you know, change in their life, and something that's very difficult to deal with, because they're so used to having a service for so long. But they're ripping apart the welfare sort of support services like Working for You, which is called in West Dunbartonshire, which are the people you go to help you, fill the benefit forms going through that process. It's just that the teams are getting absolute knackered, and that's just given a kind of fraction because we've not got enough time to go through it all. But within all that, there's still hope, and there's a community out there that are working together, striving for better, and making sure we help each other as much as possible. So there is always hope, and in the grand scheme of things, there's hope that things will become radical, and there'll be a radical positive change in the future. Because I certainly don't want to get, compounded by all the negative press that obviously the mainstream media and a lot of political stuff like to get their teeth into, because you wouldn't get out of bed otherwise, So, yeah, absolutely. The final post of today is from Autisticality education page, which is a platform from an individual to share content, their own content. I'll say that again. It's an education page, and it's described as, this is a platform for me to share my content and creations on autistic people and autistic experience, and they're based in the UK. And they're talking about autistic meltdowns and what are the signs of the meltdowns and the causes and what helps. So they say meltdowns are external responses that are caused by being overwhelmed and can occur for both autistic children and adults. Meltdowns are not tantrums. The signs of a meltdown include anger, crying, self-harm, shouting, and involuntary body movements. The causes are usually overwhelm from sensory overload or increased demands, exhaustion, example from excessive masking, changes in routine and environments, etc., difficulty in navigating a social situation, relationship, feelings of rejection, sensitivity. And what helps? Everyone deals with meltdowns in their own way. So ask the person what helps them most. Try to work out what triggers meltdowns to prevent them from beginning to happen in the first place. Do not punish or shame someone for having a meltdown. What's other people's thoughts on this last post?
I think the don't punish or shame thing feels like really important as well, because I feel like that suppression of emotion and suppression of distress can kind of just make it so much worse and more intense as well. So it's just like it's already like a layered experience, and it's like, yeah, as little as possible, and not a lot of words.
Well, thanks everybody. As we'll come to the end of the broadcast. That was, again, as always, valuable, intense, positive, negative, all the mixture of the emotions that go through going through all those different posts, discussing many different topics, from negative to positive or positive to negative. But I'll say negative to positive to end on a high note. So this is Harry's Facebook for the 9th of March 2025, which is part of the 555 Spectrum Voices conversation on Autistic Radio, which is every Sunday from 5:55 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. UK time. I've enjoyed this very much, and I look forward to doing it again next week. So thank you once again, and now over to Jules.
Thank you, Harry. Yes, really enjoyed that thought-provoking stuff. And now we're going to talk about what we do here at Autistic Radio and at Autistic Association, the charity that supports Autistic Radio.